They told me I wasn't ready 12 times. I trained the people who got promoted over me. I stayed late, fixed their messes, saved their biggest clients, and still got passed over. So I smiled, played along, and quietly built my exit. 6 months later, I walked out with their top accounts, launched my own firm, and when they begged me to come back, I said no. This is how I turned rejection into the most satisfying revenge of my life. With that same practice face, Nolan slid the folder across his desk as I sat there in that cheap office chair they never replaced, the one with the strange stain I'd been staring at for 6 years. Half smile, half frown. I opened it, but I knew what was inside. Number 12, rejection. 12 times. I had been passed over for senior consultant 12 times. And I was already aware that Alara, not me, had received it. 8 months of employment. For 8 months. The problem is, Sarah, Nolan remarked, bending forward as if we were conspirators rather than the individuals we truly were, Q4 isn't our best quarter for leadership changes. However, your name is already at the top of the list for promotions in the spring. I gave him a nod as if I believed him. As if those nearly identical words hadn't been repeated 11 times before. As if I hadn't trained every individual who had risen above me since 2018. Then I did something that even I was shocked by. I burst out laughing. Not adorable giggles. It's the kind of laugh that causes discomfort. The sort of thing that indicates I've finally lost it. Something strange happened to Nolan's face. His smile for customer service faltered. Something amusing. Yes, I replied, still giggling. Me. Because I believed you, I am the joke. 12 times. That was the beginning of it. I made the decision to set everything on fire at that point. Oh, hold on. I should probably give my introduction. My name is Sarah. At the time, I was 33 years old and employed at Paragon Strategic, a boutique consulting firm. For healthcare organizations, we provided business transformation consulting. It sounds elegant, doesn't it? I had been there for 6 years. Being the person they phoned at 11 p.m. for 6 years. When everything was crumbling. I was informed for 6 years that I was valuable but not promotable. If you have ever been in a scenario where you felt absolutely invisible despite working your ass off, please let me know in the comments section. Like this video, and subscribe to the channel before I delve further into this mess. Sincerely, knowing that I'm not alone in this helps. And believe me when I say that this story takes me in unexpected directions. Back to that office then. That instant. I informed Nolan that I understood after gathering my thoughts. That I worked well with others. Alara was basically showing off her new business cards to anyone who would look as I made my way back to my desk. Senior consultant. I should have had that title nearly 3 years ago. I'll give you some background. 3 men who had previously worked for one of the major 4 consulting firms created Paragon Strategic. Where diff you know, where family ticks was their motto. Nolan was the 6th employee. I was employee number 23, hired while they were still establishing their credibility. Half of their reporting systems were automated by me. When our project manager resigned in the middle of implementation, I saved their largest account, Heal Space Regional. I frequently put in 60-hour work weeks. I produced. Each and every time. It wasn't only that I wasn't given a promotion. Every time, they explained why. You need more experience dealing with clients. I obtained that experience. You need to show more leadership. I took charge of a group of people. I became certified in whatever new system they were putting in place because they said, you need more technical expertise. And they would move the goalposts once I checked each box. Once more. And once more. And once more. They elevated those around me in the interim. Brody, who played golf with Nolan but was often late for deadlines. Vivian, our director of consulting's dearest friend, needed my assistance to create a simple reporting dashboard. Then there is Alara, whose primary qualification appears to be that she attended the same business school as our CEO. I used to question my own health. Did I not have enough charm? Not sufficiently political? Incorrect gender? Incorrect background? I tried to crack the code for a long time. However, when Alara strutted about with her new title that day, something clicked. No code needed to be cracked. The system was simply manipulated. Not only against myself, but against everybody who genuinely thought that merit was important. I went home that evening and sobbed. Unattractive, shouted out. The kind where you're sitting at 2 in the morning on the floor of your bathroom, wondering how you got to be this person. My sister Junoe spent an hour listening to me vent when I called her. She then made a statement that completely altered the situation. So give up. I said I can't just give up. I have 6 years of investment. That's just the sunk cost fallacy, she remarked. An economist, Junoe is. She constantly uses economic ideas to diagnose my life's issues. I countered, it's not that simple. She broke off, the job market is tight and I need no daff. Find another job is not what I said. I told them to quit, that is, to stop doing your hardest. Give up caring. Give up attempting to win over those who obviously don't want to give you their approval. For a minute, I sat with that. That isn't who I am, I answered at last. She answered, perhaps it's who you need to become. That night, I was unable to sleep. Junoe's statement that I had spent 6 years attempting to prove myself to people who had already made the decision not to see me kept coming to mind. And something within of me hardened. A strategy began to take shape. I knew stuff, you see. I understood how Paragon actually operated, not just how their flashy pitch decks claimed it did. I was aware of which customers were about to leave. I was aware of the projects that were running behind schedule. In a symbolic sense, I knew where all the bodies were buried. Most crucially, I was aware that I was the glue that held at least 5 significant client relationships together, even though I had been passed over for a promotion 12 times. I went to work as usual the following morning. In the corridor, I gave Nolan a smile. I gave Alara my congratulations. I responded to project team's anxious emails. However, something had changed. I wasn't attempting to impress anyone for the first time in 6 years. Instead, I began recording everything, including every procedure I had developed, every workaround I had thought of, and every customer relationship I had managed to keep intact. I arranged everything in an own electronic notebook. My property, not the company's. I then made what I referred to as my indispensability map. It was a thorough examination of the extent to which the business relied on me, the locations of the crucial dependencies. Additionally, and this is crucial, some of my clients had ties with me rather than Paragon in general. You may be thinking, this sounds cold, even calculated. And what do you know? You're correct. However, a person will experience that after 12 rejections. Being told you're not quite good enough 12 times when you know you're excellent enough alters you. I allowed myself 6 months. I had 6 months to carry out what I began to refer to as my silent exit. Not quitting quietly. You should then take the bare minimum of action. No, I continued to work as hard as ever. But I had a new objective. I no longer work for a promotion. I was employed by myself. Making myself even more indispensable was phase 1. Seems counterintuitive? But essential. I offered to help with the trickiest client issues. When it came to troubleshooting, I became the person to call. Hillspace, our largest client, contacted me directly rather than through the Paragon support line when they had a problem. I used caution. Nothing was sabotaged by me. I didn't make up any dependencies. I simply presented myself as the answer to pre-existing issues. And I recorded everything. Building my escape hatch was phase 2. I began going out for coffee with former co-workers who had moved on to other companies. I made changes to my portfolio, not my resume, as I wasn't trying to get another work. I was setting the stage for something very else. The third phase was the most challenging. I had to begin emotionally distancing myself while maintaining my invested appearance. When Nolan claimed credit for my ideas at meetings, I stopped being upset. When I was not asked to leadership lunches, I no longer felt offended. I began to view Paragon as a stepping stone to what was ahead, rather than the organization I had dedicated 6 years of my life to. During the 4th month of my strategy, an unforeseen circumstance occurred. They gave someone else a promotion. Once more, 13 is a lucky number. Theo, who had been there for 2 years and whose primary qualification was being fiercely mediocre but quite confident about it, was the one this time. Normally, I would have been saddened by that. However, I simply complimented him and smiled. Nolan seems perplexed by my response. He had anticipated that I would cry, or at the very least, visit his office later and ask him what I needed to improve on. However, I didn't. I simply continued to work on my idea. I had saved enough money by the 5th month to last me 6 months without a job. I had, for the time being, only officially incorporated my own consulting firm. After getting a small business loan, I began speaking carefully and discreetly with 2 of Paragon's clients that I knew were unhappy. I wasn't poaching. Technically, no. I was just trying to help. Responding to inquiries. Supplying information. Establishing connections outside of Paragon. Then the day arrived. Without an appointment, I entered Nolan's office 6 months following the 12th refusal. I put my letter of resignation on his desk and stated I quit. In 3 seconds, his face changed from shock to incredulity to rage to terror to panic, which was the last reaction I was expecting. You can't give up, he stated. The Healspace implementation is currently underway. The Meridian Health Initiative is under your direction. You are necessary to us. I simply grinned. 2 weeks' notice. Everything is in the letter. Is the promotion at issue here? Since we may discuss that. I interrupted him because Q3 is approaching and I've been speaking out for you. No, Nolan. There is no negotiation here. I'm heading out. This is where things start to become pretty intriguing. This is where my 6 months of meticulous preparation begin to pay off. The moment when they fully understand what they stand to lose. I must take a moment to breathe, though, since even now 2 years later, reciting this narrative still makes my heart race. It reminds me how scared I was. How near I was to giving up. How many times did I nearly persuade myself to risk all on myself rather than continue living in that cozy misery? Thus, want to know what transpired next? How did they respond after realizing what I had done? How was my retaliation sustainable in addition to being sweet? I assure you that witnessing their pleading was only the first step. After I quit, there was complete mayhem for 2 weeks. Never in my life have I witnessed a workplace collapse so spectacularly. I was able to watch the entire event from the first row. Nolan first attempted to persuade the partners that they could just take my place. Ironically, I was not invited to the emergency leadership meeting he convened, but he reportedly stated, Sarah's contributions have been valuable, but we have strong systems in place. At that point, they began to see how mistaken he was. You see, I was completely unaware of the extent of the infrastructure I had subtly constructed over the years for Paragon. All those late evenings spent repairing issues that no one else wanted to handle. I came up with all those workarounds because the official procedures were a complete mess. It seemed as though I had been using duct tape in perseverance to keep the business afloat for the last 6 years. The terror had fully set in by the 3rd day of my notice period. All of a sudden, Nolan wanted me to record my activities. He set up meetings for knowledge sharing every day. Even if my replacement didn't yet exist, he wanted me to make training materials for him. Yes, I said with a charming smile. My consultation fee is $275 per hour. How did he seem when I stated that? Priceless. As if I had requested his firstborn kid. You are employed here, he stammered. For another 11 days, I told him. Naturally, he complained to the partners. However, they were already in a panic. Because our largest client, Healspace, had learned that I was departing. Lorraine, their CIO, had made a direct call to the CEO of Paragon. I only found out about this around lunch from Juno, the CEO's assistant. Juno said across the table, I've never seen Cormac sweat like that. She remarked, quote, if Sarah's not on our account, we need to revisit our contract. They made their first offer before the end of the first week. Nolan summoned me to his office where he and Cormac, the CEO, were seated. Cormac stated, we've been talking about your value to the company, as if this were a revelation rather than something I had been attempting to convey to them for 6 years. With immediate effect and a 15% raise, we would like to offer you the position of senior consultant. It nearly made me chuckle. Now that I was leaving, the promotion I had been pleading for was suddenly accessible. I replied, thank you for the offer, but I have other plans already. They appeared as though they had never even considered the possibility that I could have alternatives outside of Paragon. What would it require? Cormac inquired. We can increase the raise by 20%. I stated it's not about money, which was both accurate and inaccurate. Money was a factor, of course. For years, I had been paid too little. However, it was more about acknowledgement and respect. About refusing to live another day in a place that has repeatedly demonstrated to me that they didn't respect me. Things were dire by the start of the 2nd week. I was the only one who knew how to fix the broken systems. Customers were phoning and asking for me in particular. I had created a unique reporting dashboard, but no one could figure it out, and the Meridian Health project was behind schedule. At that point, they offered their second offer, a position on the leadership team and a 30% rise as a senior manager, skipping a level completely. Once more, I declined. Nolan snapped, his phony smile gone now, you're being unreasonable. We're attempting to put this right. I answered 6 years, Nolan. You had 6 years to correct the situation. On the 10th day, Cormac himself appeared at my desk. He appeared to have gone days without sleep. His voice was low as he said, name your price. Anything you desire. At the director level. Select your projects. Work from home. Simply stay. I hesitated for a moment. At Paragon, director level would have been beyond my wildest expectations. The money would change your life. The ability to select my own projects is alluring. Then I recalled. A dozen were turned down. I was informed I wasn't nearly good enough 12 times. I've witnessed someone with less qualifications get the promotion I deserved 12 times. I apologized, but I had already made up my mind. Even I was startled by what I did on my last day. I acted professionally. I gave them all the documents, contact details, and project status updates they had requested. Bridges we do not burned by me. Nothing was sabotaged by me. I simply walked out. Nolan met me in the foyer as I was leaving with my dejected little package of coffee mugs and desk plants. He said, "You're making a mistake. You can't survive alone for 6 months." I simply grinned. Observe me. The plot changes at this point. Because, although it was satisfying, my retaliation wasn't making them frightened or abruptly quitting. What followed was my retaliation. Do you recall the 2 unhappy customers I mentioned? The ones with whom I had been carefully conversing? I had formal meetings with both of them the day after I left Paragon, but not as an employee of Paragon, but rather as the CEO and creator of Clarity Partners, my own consulting business. Hillspace terminated their Paragon contract and signed with me a week later. Not just the implementation I had been working on, but all of their projects in the portfolio. Cormac phoned me when he learned. Apoplectic. "This violates your non-compete agreement," he yelled. "It's not actually," I remarked coolly. "I never agreed to a non-compete agreement. Examine your documents." He realized I was correct, so he fell silent. They had somehow never gotten around to getting me to sign a non-compete agreement in all the paperwork over the course of 6 years. A mistake that is now costing them millions of dollars. Meridian Health followed 3 weeks later. Later, their COO informed me that Cormac promised to cut their charges by 40% when they called Paragon to cancel. They said no. By the 3rd month, I had 5 clients, 2 new ones from referrals and 3 from Paragon. I was earning 3 times as much as I had at Paragon. Breyer, a talented analyst who had gone unnoticed at her prior company, was my first hire. The finest aspect? I was no longer required to work 60-hour weeks. I established limits. I billed for my value. Rather than repairing faulty systems, I created ones that were functional from the beginning. Something unexpected occurred at month 5. Remember Alara? The 12th promotion. Contacted me via LinkedIn. She requested a coffee date. She admitted, anxiously swirling her latte, "I'm miserable. Everything is collapsing. They have no idea what they're doing. Hillspace's account is a complete mess. Everyone but himself is held accountable by Nolan." I gave a sympathetic nod. I wasn't surprised by any of this. She went on, "They talk about you like you're the bogeyman. In fact, Cormac forbade anyone from mentioning your name during meetings. However, they are also unable to stop discussing how things operated while you were there." I couldn't resist feeling a little cocky. But sad too. I feel bad for those who are still confined there. I regret wasting 6 years attempting to prove myself to those who would never recognize my worth. "Why are you stating this to me?" I questioned her. She inhaled deeply. "I would like to work for you." My coffee almost choked me. "Pardon me." She acknowledged that it was strange. "And if you say no, I get it. But in a few months, you created something truly remarkable. You're working with clients who respect you and performing the work you want to accomplish. That's what I desire." I examined her face for indications of dishonesty. Was this business espionage of some sort? A ruse to have me divulge my clientele? All I saw, though, was fatigue and something I knew very well: the intense need to be appreciated for your efforts. "Please send me your resume," I said at last. "We'll speak." I received a call from an unfamiliar number 6 months to the day after I left Paragon. I answered, and a voice I knew answered. "Sarah, it's Cormac." A beat skipped in my chest. "Hi, Cormac. How may I help you?" His voice was tight as he stated, "We need to talk. We're having trouble with things here. The quarterly figures are at their lowest point in the previous 5 years. Since you left, we have lost 7 additional clients." I remained silent and waited. At last he said, "We want you back. Whatever your Kurjunoli making, will match it. Even double it. At the director level. Stake in equity. Anything you desire." I closed my eyes and absorbed the scene. I had been waiting so long to hear this very thing. Verification. Recognition. The acknowledgement that I had been correct all along. However, it was too late. Echoing what I'd said when I turned down their previous attempts to retain me, I answered, I appreciate the offer, but I'm not interested. His voice cracked as he acknowledged, we're desperate. Please. Come in for a meeting, please. Identify your terms. At that moment, I came to a significant realization. My fantasies of retaliation had always concluded with them pleading with me to return and me voluntarily agreeing on my conditions. However, now that it was truly occurring, I learned something unexpected. I had no desire to return. Not for any sum of cash. For no title. Since I had created something superior. Something I owned. I said, I'm sorry, Cormac, and to my astonishment, I really did mean it. However, I've moved on. And you ought to. I sat at my desk, my actual desk, in my actual office, with my firm name on the door and sobbed after I hung up. Not tears of sadness. Not ones that are furious. Relief. Let go. The last release after 6 years of feeling inadequate. Clarity Partners Cursionoli employs 17 people. Over the last 2 years, we have increased our revenue annually. We choose carefully who we work with, what projects we take on, and above all, how we treat our employees. My director of client services is now Alara. It turns out that she is incredibly intelligent when she is not confined to a toxic job environment. Our analytics department is now led by Briar. Juno, Cormac's previous assistant, was even brought on as our operations manager. Paragon? Although they have drastically reduced their workforce, they are still in operation. Last year, Nolan was fired. 6 months ago, Cormac made another attempt to get in touch, this time suggesting a merger. I said no. With courtesy. Seeing them struggle was not the kind of retaliation. It wasn't even in creating a profitable business of my own. Finding out that I never required their approval in the first place was the true form of retaliation. That even when they didn't value me, I could. 12 rejections? They were successful. They pushed me in the direction of where I should have been all along, 12 redirections. Therefore, if you're sitting there feeling ignored, underappreciated, or trapped in a situation that doesn't appreciate what you have to offer, listen to me. To keep others warm, you don't have to burn yourself alive. You don't need to continue trying out for roles that have already been rejected. Getting even isn't always the best form of retaliation. The goal is freedom. And look, I understand that this tale may appear too polished, too ideal. But it's real, I assure you. I can show it with my tax returns and battle scars. Please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you found any portion of this story to be relatable. If you've ever had to give up something in order to realize your actual value, please leave a remark below. I read all of your comments and your personal tales make me feel less isolated. I appreciate you putting up with my extended tirade. There are moments when I still find it hard to comprehend how my life has changed in just 2 years. Just keep in mind, the incapacity of another person to recognize your worth does not diminish it. And that's the real lesson in all of this. Sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't loud or dramatic. It's building a life so full of purpose, peace, and self-worth that you no longer need anyone's approval. If you're hurting right now, I see you. Set boundaries. Invest in yourself. Let go with grace. Healing doesn't mean forgetting, it means choosing not to carry their weight anymore. Have you ever been betrayed, overlooked, or underestimated? Share your story in the comments. Let's remind each other we're not alone. What does your version of rising above look like?